We're 15 minutes in, and we haven't talked about anything yet. We were supposed
got a good one tonight.
Bradley Cooper.
Got a good one. You can't get on Amazon or anything or start your Dr. Doom, speech on the game tonight. You got a good one. So give it some.
Yeah. We do?
Yeah.
We do?
Yeah.
The Cowboys are favored by 9.5 points.
Okay. So what? We got a desperate Seahawks team. It's got a lot of stars across the board. It's desperate time for Seattle. So that's what I do like. Desperation usually means good football and maybe some results that we don't expect. So I think that's where it's good. That's where I like the matchup.
Ooh, you're going to pick the Seahawks to win? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure about that.
I'm not sure about that.
I'm not sure about that. But there's some
You're
things
just
I
saying
like.
it adds drama.
Yes.
It adds intrigue. Although, hey, 3 days ago we saw a team 6-5 that was trying to avoid falling to 6-6, and they sure didn't play with the kind of urgency that you're implying the Seahawks are going to display tonight.
No, well, yeah, you're right. They did not. But we'll see. This is not a journeyman quarterback that they got. There's a little culture there in Seattle. They playoff football team last year. They don't have any significant injuries like your Vikings team does. So there's a little difference there. They're a little banged up, sure, but yeah, these are big moments for Seattle. I mean, Seattle's underwhelming, really, right? Since the start of the season, it's just like, how good is the Seattle Seahawks? I think that's where you start. We know Dallas is legit, right? I think you and I both agree. I mean, Dallas definitely third best team in the NFC, definitely a top 5 team in football or right around that. So we'll discuss them in a minute. But Seattle is the team that's like the conundrum right now of football. Whatever side you want to talk about here, but you talk about the talent they have in their football team. We've hit on it, right? The skill guys, they got good tight end play. They got 2 good running backs. It's a shame they got 2 good running backs, and they got an O-line that's just not very good. It doesn't run block good. It doesn't pass protect good. Geno hasn't been as good as he was last year. The defense, you flip it over there, they got an all-star secondary to a degree, right? But they're still letting up yards. They got a pretty good front seven that they shouldn't be getting gashed the way they get gashed right now. So that's where it's hard to find Seattle. And it's just like, Mike, I go, how good is Seattle? I don't know. I think they fooled us a little bit with that early season Detroit win in Detroit, where the Lions turned the ball over.
And the Giants Monday night game.
And yeah, you're right. And I think those 2 moments kind of made us think, okay, maybe they're a little bit better than they are. But, since then, they haven't beat a team that we would look at as one of the upper tier teams in football. They've been kind of feasting on the poor, as I like to say. And I think that's the big question tonight is, can they turn this around here in the next 5 or 6 weeks to look like a legit playoff team that could actually maybe beat somebody in a wild card round?
Is that a Greenwich saying, feasting on the poor? I have a feeling that's a Greenwich.
It's really not. I think I've always kind of said it. It's not a Greenwich saying. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, you've always been rich. You've always been rich.
Always been
I figure that's something
spoonish.
rich people would say, feasting on the poor. All right. So, I do a radio thing every Wednesday on KJR in Seattle, and they're just resigned to the fact that the gap between the Seahawks and the 49ers is actually growing because they're dismayed that they were beaten so badly last Thursday night on NBC and Peacock by the 49ers. And I said, look, when the 49ers are fully healthy, they're going to do what they did to the Seahawks to pretty much everybody. It's not a reflection on the Seahawks that the 49ers are the best team in football when they're healthy. So, yeah, you're assigned to that division. You're kind of stuck with this life cycle of talent and coaching and everything they have going for them for as long as it lasts. But
yeah.
It's kind of hard to close the gap with a team that is that good. And if that's how you're judging yourself, if that's your measuring stick, you are going to be depressed. Because, look, when the 49ers had their 3-game losing streak, when they weren't healthy,
right?
The Seahawks took over first place in the division. And I think, look, I remember kind of thinking wistfully when we thought the Seahawks were better than they were. Hey, they're really going to separate. They're going to have a chance to show that maybe they're the best team in the conference in this 49ers, Cowboys, 49ers, Eagles 4-pack of games. And now I look at it and say they're probably going to lose all 4 of them.
Yeah, I hear you there. I think it's scary, or it's definitely a flip of the coin right now to know what you're going to get or expect from the Seattle Seahawks. I think what you say about the 49ers and what they're dealing with. Right, they've had to deal with some good teams in their division. The Rams won the Super Bowl, just 2 years ago, of course, and we know the 49ers have been in the mix for, the last 4 years. And I think the weird thing to me with the Seattle, and especially after the fact that we saw them almost have a mini dynasty early on in the 2010s and get to 2 Super Bowls in a row there, where it was all predicated on, a dominant offensive line overpowering you and a dominant defensive line, a lot like the 49ers. And that's where the Seahawks can't match up with the NFL elite right now. That's the problem, right? I mean, on offense, they can't run the ball. All right, so then they're resigned to throwing the ball too much. They're not throwing the ball that great. Their offense isn't that creative that the pass game can just carry it by itself. The O-line's not great at pass protecting. They do have Abraham Lucas, I think, coming back at right tackle, so that's going to be a big deal for them. That helps. But, then on top of that, you talk about those problems. All right, they're bad on third down. They're one of the worst in football. They're bad in the red zone, right? That filters over to their defensive side of the ball. You're bad on third down. Usually means you're bad at time of possession, which they're bad at as well. Now their defense is on the field. So it hasn't been like a cohesive team feeds off team type of formula this year from Seattle. It's like a collection of plays on both sides of the ball. It's hey, they drive the ball to through the 30s, they kick a field goal, they can't score. And then all of a sudden they might hit a deep touchdown from 40 yards out. But it's kind of just all over the place that way. You never feel like they can sustain drives and be consistent and score points, drive after drive. And that's kind of been the problem that's plagued them all year on the offensive side of the ball at least.
You mentioned Lucas, he is back, but there are plenty of injuries for the Seattle Seahawks. Kenneth Walker the second, who has the potential to be one of the great running backs in the game.
No doubt.
Can't stay healthy.
Right.
He's got an oblique injury. He is doubtful. There's the rest of the notable injuries for tonight, and they're all Seahawk logos except for Peyton Hendershot. Cowboys tight end is questionable with an ankle. The good news, though, for the Seahawks, remember there was that triceps injury suffered by Geno Smith the Sunday before the Thanksgiving night game when they got swept by the Rams. There was a question whether or not he was going to be able to play. He was questionable, and he played. Pete Carroll has addressed Geno's health this week versus last week. Here is what Pete Carroll had to say.
No, it was different night and day. Night and day. I mean, he's out there running practice and putting on a show for us as he does every week. We're throwing the football all over the place, and he did that exactly. He was full go the whole time, and that was not the case. And so, we want to make a big deal about it, but it's pretty obvious. There's a big difference.
And it's funny because, we knew in the run-up to the game that he was injured. There were no shenanigans with the injury report, as possibly happened one Thursday earlier. But after the game, everybody was like, oh, he was fine. He was fine. He was fine. It wasn't an issue. Well, of course it was an issue. Of course it was an issue. And I get it that you don't want to use injuries as an excuse. You don't want to get into that habit. There are no excuses. We just didn't execute. We didn't get it done. But they seem to be optimistic, Chris, that we're going to see a better version of Geno Smith this week. And, hey, we mentioned this from time to time. Even though the reporting that happened at the time the deal was done told us all it was 3 years, $100+ million. It's 1 year, 28.
Yeah.
And they can tear it up and walk away, just
Right.
like the Raiders did with Derek Carr after 1 year of his contract. Tear it up and walk away and move on to another option at quarterback, whoever that might be. And I don't know that there's a playoff mandate, officially or unofficially, or what it's going to take for the Seahawks to maybe go in a different direction. And a lot of it depends upon what they think their options are. But, Chris, right now,
Yeah,
he's up against it
definitely.
to prove that he belongs there next year as the starter. And tonight's game, I think, is going to be a big data point when they get to the end of the season and figure out what the right thing for the organization might be.
Yeah, I think this whole stretch is a big data point for him, right? I mean, to see where and it hasn't been as good as last year. He hasn't thrown the ball as well as last year. He hasn't taken care of the ball as well as last year. Those are all problems, right? So we know Pete Carroll doesn't like that, a defensive head coach. I think this stretch here is going to be a little bit of a telltale sign of, wait, do we have the type of quarterback that can help us beat, the NFC elite, right? That's what we're seeing. Now, he gets the benefit of the doubt last week because we know the 49ers are awesome. And, yeah, Geno wasn't 100%, right? But, yeah, this is, I think, a part of the the test or whatever you want to call it of the Seattle Seahawks evaluating him to figure out whether he is the guy for next year. As it stands right now, yeah, it's thin ice, I think, for Geno Smith and being back for next year and collecting another $28 million check, right? But we'll see how it goes tonight. Tonight, maybe they can get it started. Right, well, like we talked about, they haven't beaten very many quality teams. The Lions are really the most quality win they got on the schedule. Dallas, we know, talent, their defense comes after you. That worries me for Geno Smith and that Seattle Seahawks offensive line. We just talked about it's not that good. You saw the guard, Phil Haynes, he's out. That's a little bit of an issue. Their interior part of their O-line's not good to begin with. Now they got that to deal with. And you got Dallas with all those crazy mofos, and the craziest mofo of all, number 11, going to be all over him all night, Micah Parsons. Well, I will give them where I do give them a little bit of a shining light or a what do they call it, a fighter's chance, a boxer's chance, whatever, is that Dallas is so super aggressive on defense at times, as we know, it could lend itself to, hey, we know they got some freaks on the outside in Seattle with DK Metcalf and Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba, to where if they roll the dice too much trying to pressure Geno and really smother them that way, they could leave themselves in some compromised positions for, covering Seattle. And you add that to Seattle's desperation, where I think they got to be looking, hey, we got to figure out how to make some big plays and maybe let it loose a little bit. I think that's where the game could be dangerous for Dallas on a Thursday night.
As you were discussing Geno Smith and the issue with turnovers, and we know how Pete Carroll feels about that, and we know what kind of offense he wants to run, I just allowed myself to ponder some of the names that might be available if they don't go the young quarterback route. And, Kirk Cousins is going to be free and clear. And I allowed myself to ponder for a second or two what that might look like if he were to go to Seattle, where he'd be in the same division as the 49ers and face them twice a year. And we saw what he did to the 49ers on that Monday night several weeks ago. And I'm sure Pete Carroll saw it too. And this is one of the realities of having the kind of flexibility the Seahawks have. All bets are off after the season. They can go whatever direction they want, and we know Cousins is going to be available. Some of these other veteran quarterbacks, we don't know. We don't know what the Bears are going to do with Justin Fields. We don't know what the Cardinals might do with Kyler Murray. Not that they would trade him to the Seahawks, and I'm not sure that he would fit with what Pete Carroll wants to do, but Cousins is out there free and clear and able to plug right in with those freaky receivers, with that defense that is better than many, if not any, that Kirk Cousins has had. It's just something to keep an eye on. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.